Hello and welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. How are you today? My name is Holly B. I am your host, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Chad Nedland today. I'm going to go ahead and read his bio to you. Chad Nedland is a dedicated father of three and husband of one, but Chad is more than just a family guy. He's a dynamic speaker with a knack for combining humor and authority. Starting with 7 years of intentional homelessness to understand the root of the human condition, and 20 years dedicated to helping people uncover the power of their personal identity in their life and business. Chad brings a unique blend of warmth and expertise to the stage. Standing in front of crowds from 5 to 5,000, he has spoken from the East Coast to the West Coast and virtually around the globe, focusing his efforts to combine a knowledge of the human mind coupled with his passion for business. He has continued to fulfill his commitment to impact 1 million lives per day. Lofty goal or child's dream? He invites you to decide. As you can probably gather from his bio, Chad is a really fun speaker and is a great storyteller. He's got so much experience just in the way that he has lived his life. And as you probably gathered just from listening to the bio, Chad is a great storyteller and uses his stories to really impress upon the listener the really valuable lessons that he has learned throughout his really unique life experience. And he is so passionate about helping people level up in their own lives. So, what we really dive into is mindset, because mindset is behind everything that he does. He typically works with people in their business lives and helping them level up in business. But all of these same mindset principles can be applied to anyone really in any circumstance in their life. So we talk a lot about his initial journey, that journey of homelessness, and what he discovered on his path to figuring out what that root of the human condition is. And we get into the powers of resiliency, what resiliency means, what that looks like, how you can create resiliency in your life. And we also talk about willpower, which is another topic when it comes to self-care in your daily life, in any aspect, but especially in terms of managing a health experience or a long-term health condition. So there's some really valuable tips in this episode that you're going to want to listen into, as far as if you are experiencing chronic fatigue or something that keeps you from living quote unquote normal daily life. He includes a lot of tips on how to use minimum effort to maximize your efficacy in your day-to-day business, right? So using less effort to get more done and feeling accomplished, not feeling like crap at the end of the day because you didn't check everything off of your mile-long to-do list. So if that's something that you struggle with, because I know it's always something that I had struggled with, still too on occasion, I'm always dialing this in. But if that's something that resonates with you, you're definitely going to want to listen to this, even just for that part of the conversation. I'm going to let us dive right in and stay tuned to the end, because Chad does have a freebie offer for all of the listeners as well. Okay. So with that, let's dive into the episode with Chad. Chad Nedland, welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I can't wait for our conversation. I've really enjoyed speaking with you the few times that we have, and I saw you speak recently at a mastermind that I went to, and I was really taken with your story and your energy, and I was like, I have to connect with you and get you on my podcast. So welcome.
Thank you very much. And likewise, I've had a blast talking with you a few times that we've chatted. And I love what you do. A lot of people, they have this tiny little segment and it's like, how can I profit from it? But just looking at you and talking with you and your content, I really see that you actually care about the people that you serve. And that's one of the reasons I said yes,
So
because I love people. In
I
case you haven't
appreciate
noticed.
that. Absolutely. Um, Speaking of people, you went on a pretty major journey to understand the roots of the human condition. You were in a dark place in your own life
Yeah.
and you were ready to toss it to the wind, but you decided to figure out like what's really going on here.
Mhm.
And if you could start with that journey just to set the tone so people understand like why they should listen to you, why you actually have some experience that might help them.
Okay.
I'd love to hear what that journey was like and what you found.
I'm going to step one step behind the journey because it's important. Because when I start talking about the journey, I'm sure many of you are going to go, why would you do that? So I'm going to back it up literally the day before, less than 24 hours before I left the journey. My brother and I were sitting downstairs at his place and we were smoking a joint and we were stoned out of our gourd. And my brother asked me, he goes, so what you going to do tomorrow? And I says, I don't know, walk to California. Now we were in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the time, and he laughed. He was like, "Let me know when you get there." And I said, "All right." Went to bed that night. I think I went to bed or passed out. I wasn't sure, but I woke up the next morning, and I remember looking in a mirror, and I thought to myself, "I could just kill myself now, or I've got to stop this lifestyle because it's killing me either way." And I just didn't have it in me to kill myself at that point. And I said, "What am I going to do?" Like this was my life. This was everything that I was all around me constantly. I couldn't get away from it, no matter where I turned. It was drugs. It was just that lifestyle. And I remembered I told my brother I was going to walk to California. And I shook my head for half a second. And then I remembered my grandfather's words. And he says, man can strip you from everything you got, but he can't take your word. Man ain't got his word. He ain't got nothing. And I thought, my word is the only thing I've got. So I took $12.73 off the top of the dresser, grabbed a couple pieces of clothing, stuck it in a school bag, slung it over my shoulder, and I began to walk. And I got a lot of time to ask myself some questions about myself, about my life, about a lot of things. I walked to California. It took me 3.5 months. A lot of people say, "How did you walk that far?" Be honest, it was one step at a time. Some days, it was just to the next rock. But I got to ask myself a lot of questions, like, why do I do this? Why have I done this to my life? I had a very promising life. I had a I had an amazing military career. I had a family who loved me most of the time. But I also went through a nasty divorce. I lost my family. I lost my kids. I lost connection with things that mattered. And that consumed me. It's like just a nagging pain that never went away. It was something that just encapsulated every aspect of my life. And it wasn't the drugs, it wasn't the lifestyle that had me. It was this pain inside. I just always hurt and I just wanted it to numb out, go away. I had no purpose. I had no drive. So I knew I had one purpose. I had to make it to California because I said I would. And gosh darn it, I'm going to be a man of my word. I didn't realize it, but I really emblazoned inside myself that I would always be a man of my word. There had to be something different about me than was before. And I walked and I asked questions and said, why do we do this? Why do we act the way we do? Why do we think the way we do? Why do we process things the way that we do? And over the course of that time, I went through a lot. I was beaten up and left for dead a couple times in a ditch. Got up and kept walking the next day. Didn't move very fast, but kept on going. There were days I didn't have food. There were days I didn't have water, but I found a way. There was always something because I had a commitment. I had a purpose. Now, to some, it may sound silly, walk to California. What's the purpose in that? Ask yourself this: if your only purpose to be alive was to walk to California, would it be important to you? Yeah, it would become the only thing that mattered. And that's where I was. But I had to figure out, is there more than this? Because eventually I'm going to get to California and I got to do something. And I had to get to the root. Why did I end up the way that I ended up? Back in high school, I loved psychology. I loved the human mind. When I was in the military, I loved the human mind. Why do we do the things that we do? But I forgot all those lessons. But I started remembering some of those questions and I started to dig really deep. Well, push comes to shove, I made it to California. And I decided the best way to figure out the human condition is to start at the root. And I looked around and I was okay. At this point, I'd had $50 in my pocket already. I'd worked along the way, and I'm seeing these homeless people on the street, not really connecting the fact that I was homeless, right? I was just a guy walking to California, didn't have a house, didn't have a home, didn't have a job, but I didn't see myself as homeless. But I saw these other people that were, and that's what they saw. And I started to talk with them and visit with them, and I realized that they weren't any different than I was. They had just lost hope. They had lived in their misery and their pain for so long that they felt that there was no way out. And I said, I have to get to the root. What made this happen? Where was the switch from I have hope for tomorrow to I have no hope for my future? For the next 7 years, I lived in homeless camps all over the US. I traveled around the US. I'd go from homeless camp to homeless camp. And there's a big difference between visiting with the homeless in the city and a homeless camp. Most of the homeless camps were 5 to 7 miles outside of the city. And that's where they went when the city no longer allowed them to be in the city anymore. So it was like the last place, like the old joke, let's go visit the graveyard. It's the last place anybody goes before they leave. That's where they went. That's where many died because they had nothing else, but they formed communities. And I found that even in that sense of loss with no purpose, they were still drawn into community. They were drawn together and they all found a purpose. They found a purpose to take care of one another. Instead of killing themselves, they reached out to support someone else. And all of a sudden they found purpose, no hope, but they had purpose. And I thought, wow, is that really what it takes? And it just seemed like that was so far out of grasp. But then I thought about it and I was like, you know what? Not too long back, I was about ready to take my own life before I headed to California. But then I found a purpose. And I spent 3 months walking through some of the most arduous trials. And like burying myself in sawdust in the winter to not freeze up at night. I did some crazy things just to survive. And then I realized for 7 years, I've continued this hard life for a purpose. And I was like, wow, is that really what I was lacking this whole time was just purpose? So I like to share with people, like when they're hitting that point where they just can't go on, is to identify a purpose. Maybe your purpose is just to make your neighbor next door smile. I know some people like my mom, sometimes her purpose was just feeding the cats, making the cats feel loved. Sometimes it's the simplest thing, but do you have a purpose? And I found at the root of the human condition, it's community and purpose. And if we can help people to find those things, then we can give them a way to look past where they are or what they're currently experiencing and begin to have that outward focus. Because oftentimes you get a headache, it gets worse and worse the more you think about the headache. But if you've got a headache and you start focusing on the grandkids or the neighbors or the beautiful scene outside or that great crossword puzzle, all of a sudden it takes a back seat in your mind. And I found in myself and with other people that I've worked with, sometimes it's just helping them to redirect their thought and their focus to help them deal with those things that are constantly affecting them each day.
I didn't realize that you had taken that to a 7-year stretch. That's
Great thing, I ended
amazing.
up getting married, and my wife and I went out for another few years, just the two of us. Had our child on the road working with the homeless too. So it's
Wow.
again a heart passion work
Uh-huh.
with people in that position.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was also wondering what time of year it was that you chose to walk across the country.
I started in, I believe it was May. I started.
Okay.
So
So
it
not the
was
dead of winter, at
not
least.
the dead of winter, but it did get cold in the mountains.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
By the time I hit the mountains, it was starting to get real cold at night.
Yeah. Wow. So that brings up, I mean, your commitment to getting to California through just the hardships of that you were going to encounter in walking there. That brings up the topic of resiliency. And I know that's something that you speak to as well. So what is resiliency in your point of view? And does it mean, is it more than just pushing through to get to that next thing. Is there more to it than that?
Yeah. I guess if I were to say the pushing through to the next thing, that's just stubborn, pig-headed, bullheaded. That's just stubborn grit. Resiliency is literally the ability to bounce back and regain your original form. So, like, if you think about a Super Bowl, when you drop the ball, it reshapes itself on impact. But then when it bounces back, it regains its original form. Now, in regaining its original form is actually what pushes it back to the original position. Now, that's just the core of resiliency. But my take on resiliency in life is that when we come back to our original form, we have one of two options. We can exert another force from side, forward or back, that would change us into a new position, or we will be stuck bouncing back to not only the original form, but the original position. Now, can you imagine going to bed in pain every night? You hit the ground in pain and you wake up the next morning and you get up and you're still back in pain. And you just repeat that cycle every day. That's all you do. My job is to be in pain during the day and then ache at night. Be in pain during the day, ache at night. But what would happen if we exerted a little bit of force? We woke up in pain, but we had purpose. Then we, like a ball, if you just tap it on the side, when it bounces back up, now every time it hits, it'll be moving forward. Now, the cool thing is no matter where you hit that ball, it will always be going forward, no matter what direction you hit it from. So whatever you choose in your life to have purpose, instead of like getting up in the morning, just like being in pain, it's being in pain. But what is your purpose for the day? What am I here to accomplish? Who am I here to impact? Who am I here to change? What am I here to change in my surroundings? Maybe you're always in pain because you sleep with 15 degrees too cool in your house and you just ache up stiff and uncomfortable. Change something. Maybe it's something that'll eliminate it. Maybe it'll make a reprieve. But the key to resiliency is knowing that you will always come back to your original shape or form if you choose to get up. That's the stubborn, I'm going to get up. And when you get back up, you're going to be right where you were the day before, unless you have something that drives you forward. The purpose of resiliency is not to bring you back to where you were, but to bring you back to a position so you can move forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. So I'm thinking of this from the standpoint of somebody who is in actual chronic pain or is going through a really challenging health experience, like an autoimmune disease, maybe even cancer. And they feel like maybe some of them feel like they had a purpose. And now all of a sudden, they don't know how to pursue that purpose because they are bogged down by all of these health issues. They don't have the energy. They don't feel well enough. They don't know how to, like, maybe they're in and out of the hospital.
Mm.
How did they continue to hold on to that purpose? Or do they look for a shift in purpose, perhaps? Like, what can they look for in those circumstances to build that resiliency?
Okay. I'm going to use my dad, for example. My dad got hit with Agent Orange back in Vietnam. He then ended up with MS and ultimately cancer. He was in pain his entire life. He was constantly in pain. And we used to get very angry because of the pain that he was in. But at a certain point, not too many years ago, he met my mom. And he realized that although he wasn't given the opportunity to be the head of his house when he was growing up and when he had kids, he married my mom. And I showed him right away, no, it's your house. You're the head of this household. You're the dad. You lead. We did this on a 4-wheeler trip. First time out, we were going to go out 4-wheeling, mom and him on one, my wife and I on the other. And I said, you lead. And he drove us up. We hit a fork in the road. This is right by our house. I know these trails. And he goes, just go ahead. I'll follow you. And I says, no, you the dad. I says, you married my mom. You accept the role of head of the household. You're going to take it. He goes, no, you go ahead. And I just sat there and stared at him. And mom just leaned forward and she whispered, and she says, Gary, you're going to have to choose. That's the stubborn in me, right? he drove forward. Something switched in him that day. He realized that he was angry because he was never able to lead his family like he would have liked because of all that pain. But then he was given an opportunity to lead in a different situation, in a situation in which he had support and care and love and kindness. And I bring that apart to the point where he became an amazing leader in our family. And only a few years later, just last year, cancer finally took hold. He lost that battle. And for once, he was free of pain. He's no longer with us, but he's no longer hurting. But he died, and everybody that knew him said he was such a kind man. And his kids go, I don't know who you're talking about. It's not who we knew. And my mom says, maybe you should have been here for the last 4 years. What he did is he took that pain and he said, really what I need to be is my purpose. I need to be the leader in my home. But he had to go into another situation and fulfill that purpose. So maybe you used to sit in an office and you were a leader. You had a management job. Okay, where could you help in management that doesn't require you to be there 40 hours a week? Is there something local where you could volunteer in a leadership position in your local community that maybe it required you an hour or two flex schedule to help with community events? Finding another way to fulfill your purpose in life is sometimes the key to getting past it, holding you back. Because I know for myself, when I had to step away from that identity of who I was, because it was based in what I did, I was completely lost. I had no direction. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I wanted to give up on life because my identity was wrapped up in something that it's a season, folks. You can move forward. You can become a new person. So now maybe you're a new person with chronic pain, or you're a new person with, you got a couple of years ago and now you can't focus on things. Whatever it may be, we have to adjust because life adjusts around us, circumstances change. It may be finding a new way to apply your purpose. It may be just saying, this is my purpose. This is where I'm meant to be. But there's a lot of things that I don't need to be doing to accomplish my purpose. And sometimes that's what it takes, is just figuring out, how do I maintain the energy that I need to fulfill my purpose?
And you brought up identity there as well. So identity is a challenging thing because we can get so tied into identity as far as more of the labels, I think, that we've put on ourselves, taken on, experienced, were given throughout our lives. And then something comes in and shakes that up a little bit. And all of a sudden, that it just throws us off course, whether it's an illness, whether it's any other life, losing a job. You maybe I identified as the manager of a company and I thought I had it made. I loved my job. And all of a sudden, they're making cuts and I'm going because I
Yeah.
cost them too much. Now what? That was my identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about that shifting of identities and following, like opening the possibilities to creating new ideas or concepts of who you are? And should we identify with a label, mom, sister, CEO, or should we look deeper and see actually what's underneath all of those labels? It's a lot.
That's just a little touch. You know what I talked at. So,
Yep.
okay. So, like identity, most people think identity, that's how other people identify who we are. Cop says, show me your ID. Okay. I'm not a piece of plastic. So that's not my identity. That's an ID card. That's an identification card. So they say, who are you? Well, I'm Chad Nedland. Oh, is that my identity? No, that's a name to identify who I am to other people. So the true identity, or the natural identity, which is one of the areas that I help people with, is what is left when you strip down all of the societal names. What happens when you strip down all of the family expectation? What happens when you strip down all of the school pressures and the society saying you got to do this, that, and the other? When your job tells you this is who you are. That's what you're supposed to do. When you take all that away, what's left is you. Now, the beauty, especially here in Western culture, is that I take people through an exercise that helps them to strip all of those away and says, is this me or is this them? Okay, yes, this is me, but do I believe it because of me or because that's what I was taught to believe? And we start eliminating all these things, and 99.9% of the time, everybody is left with a blank piece of paper. And I get to ask them and say, without all of that, what would you choose to believe? And they're like, I don't know. And it's just, then go back to your desire. Who do you desire to be? What do you desire to have in your life? What do you desire to accomplish in your life? Okay, great. Now let's start writing down, who would you have to become to be worthy of those outcomes? See, we get to decide who we are. That's what most people don't understand. They think you're a brother. No, that just happens to be the position I was born into. It doesn't mean I am a brother. I know this because I am a brother, and I have a brother who doesn't act like a brother. So it's not who he is, it's just a position. So when we get that choice of saying, what do I want out of life? Now, what do I have to become to be worthy of that? We start to create our own natural identity. And I say a natural identity because we're not creating something that's false. It's just we're putting the pieces together to achieve what it is that we desire most in ourselves. And that's what creates the identity, because we say, this is what I'm worthy of. This is how you'll identify me, because you'll know me by my works. You'll see who I am. I have so many people are like, so what do you do? I was like, come do a call of mine. You'll see. Well, what do you do? Here's a link. Come to the call. You'll see. And they're like, wow, why would I come? I said, I don't know. See you on Monday. The ones who come go, wow, that blew my mind. The ones who don't will never know, but I wasn't for them. And that's what I love doing, is helping people say, you can be anything that you want to be. You can be anyone you want to be. You can fulfill whatever desires you want. But sometimes we have to take a step back and say, what is required for that to happen? And what am I capable of doing in my current state? Don't worry about anything that you can't do because of an illness or a chronic pain or a mental issue. Don't worry about the things that you can't control. Do you know why? Because you can't control them. So why waste your energy on them? Why not take all of that energy and pour it into what you can control, what you can affect, and you'll find that you will be transformed in the process.
I love that you're talking about focusing on the cans, not the can'ts. What is in your control? I refer to that as the art of surrender. Surrendering to what is outside of your control. And then what you do have control over, you can control your response to things, right? Or you can control the way you react to things. You can control the way you approach things. So that's really powerful when people can actually understand that concept, because it's a simple one, but it's profound. And we can get so busy up in our mind that we end up in reaction mode and we don't realize that we're there, right?
Yeah, we're taught to believe that our intention is what directs our attention. But when you look at people, you find it's the exact opposite. Whatever we give the most attention to is what forms our intention for the day. If I give all of my pain to my aching back in the morning, because I spent years as a household mover, I got an achy back every day. My knees creak, my left one gives out on me. But if that's where I gave all of my attention, my intention would not to be go climb the side of the mountain with my kids. My intention would be sit on the porch and encourage my kids as they play. But if my intention is to create an engaging memory with my children, I'm going to pour all my attention on what can I do to make that happen. So maybe I just go out in the yard and not move around, but just toss a ball back and forth, or go for a light walk and talk about nature and the things with my kids and create moments for them to remember. Attention is controlled by our intention when we are intentional about where we place the attention.
Do that one more time.
Intention will control our attention. When we focus our attention, that's what directs our intention. So really what we have to do is take our attention and just say, I'm going to give my attention to the things that will bring about what I intend to happen in life. Because we focus on the attention. It's like willpower versus stubborn. Like we give it a name and then we focus our energy in the wrong spot. If all I did was sit around in intention all day, like I get no results. But if I say, this is my intention, that my wife would feel loved today, and then I focused all my attention on work, it's not going to feel that loved. But if I say my intention is that my wife would feel loved today, and then I focused my attention and say, I have a lot of work to do today. How can I be intentional about getting up and giving my wife some of the attention? And then she's going to feel loved and I'm going to get the work done. When we take our attention and we focus on the things that will bring about the intention, we don't even have to focus intention anymore. We just identify what tasks do I need to focus on to get the result I'm looking for. And then we never have to worry about the result. And if we're not worried about the result, then we're not worried about what we can't do. We're only focusing on the things that we can do. And we have confidence that if we focus on what we can do, then we know the results are assured.
That seems to take a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
Yeah. I've got a couple key things that I always remember. So the key to complexity is simplicity. And the key to simplicity is being able to see the whole picture. So when we take a look at the whole picture and we just say, what is actually going to get me the result? I know because we touched on people with chronic pain and how that can be exhausting. And we go to bed at night feeling exhausted and wiped out because we didn't do the things that really needed to get done. But we spent a lot of time trying to accomplish a lot of things. So we did the little things to try and make ourselves feel good about getting stuff done. But then we feel miserable because the important stuff didn't get done. What would happen if we, again, reverse engineered that whole process? What if we looked at it and say, if today I was only able to accomplish one thing on my list, only one, and then I was done for the entire day, what one thing on that list would be the most important thing to accomplish to move me towards my goal? And then you focus all your attention on that one thing. It may be the hardest thing, but you did. That's what you did. Guess what? You'd go to bed and you'd have a list of 90 things that were not accomplished. And you would feel great because you did the most important thing that could be handled that day. And if you get it done, great. You look at the list and you go, if I could do only one thing, my list only has one thing ever. I never have a list longer than one. Because as soon as I identify that one thing, I take it off and I write it down on a separate piece of paper. And that's my list, one thing. And that keeps my attention focused only on what I can affect and only what's going to get me the greatest reward. That's why I have my clients go, how can you run all that business stuff, do all these things, get all this done, do conference, write a book, spend time with, how do you do that? And I said, it's just easy. I work about 29 hours a day and I usually get it done in about 8 hours, because what would normally take me 4 hours because I'm going here and going there and doing this and doing that, if I sit down with laser focus, I'm done in 15 minutes. So we compress time, get more results by eliminating all of the things that are distraction, and never work on anything more than 50 minutes straight. Pomodoro says 47 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. I like 50 minutes because I don't like doing the math. Yep.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Yeah.
You're talking 15 minutes, 50.
Yes, 50.
Yeah.
I like doing 10-minute sprints. I'll do 10 minutes and then stop for a couple minutes, 10 minutes and stop for a couple minutes. But then at that 50-minute mark, I just stop and I do something different. Mm-hmm. I play a pointless, stupid game on my phone. I may get up if my kids aren't in the middle of school and hang with them for a couple of minutes. I might go pick on my wife for 2 minutes and then run away because that's what a smart husband would do. But you just give yourself a mental break from whatever it is that you're doing. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to focus on it. Just completely take your mind away from it. And then when you come back, it's fresh. And then you're just starting fresh. And that's what I love about that process.
Yeah, I love that too. It makes sense in business, but it makes even more sense in chronic health, honestly, because I don't think we're taught to think about our daily to-do list that way. And when somebody, I don't know if you've heard of the spoon theory, for anybody that is listening that hasn't, when you have a chronic health issue and you only have so much energy in any given day, you look at it as how many spoons do I have? Like, how many spoonfuls of energy do I have today? And say you have 6 spoons in your hand, and you know that showering is going to take 1 spoon. You know that cooking breakfast is going to take another spoon. Maybe going to the grocery store might take 2 spoons. You have to like really focus on the most important things. And so essentially time blocking and giving
Yeah.
yourself lots of space to take the rest that you need, take a nap if you need it, zone out on a book or sit on the porch for a bit and just be. And knowing that you can do that intentionally and that you have that scheduled into your day is really refreshing, I
Yeah.
think.
And I don't think people realize their brain uses almost as many calories as their body does for an average person. So think about that for a second. If you're getting worn out physically doing more than 15 or 20 minutes, don't you think your brain needs a break too? Because it's using up that energy. And the more it uses, the less your body has to use. It's still energy. It's not a different type of energy. We're not gas down here and electricity up here. It's all electricity in the body. That's what makes things move and happen. So wherever that energy is being used, sometimes, hey, if you got to get some stuff done physically, put in some earphones, put on some nice relaxing music that you can just zone out to and do the physical work. Maybe wash the dishes, dust the house, but do something that requires no brain power whatsoever. You'll find you have more physical power to accomplish those tasks.
That's a really great tip. I've never heard that. That's super helpful. And we were talking before we recorded today, and I was saying I'm having a low energy day. So I made sure I didn't schedule anything after we record this so I can take a nap.
Yeah.
Well, guilt free.
Exactly. And I responded in kind. Yep, I got up early today to take care of extra stuff so that afterwards I could just take a nap and relax after this call. And
Right?
like you said, guilt free. Because
Right.
there's nothing more exhausting than taking a nap, stressed about what you're not getting done. And you wake up twice as tired as when you laid down. Why?
Exactly.
Because this is still working. It's still burning that energy. Well, we got to get this to stop sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I am a big fan of using frequencies for brain entrainment. So
Yes.
if y'all need a break, hop on YouTube, get a binaural or an isochronic tone right in the 4.5 to 5 hertz range. It'll drop you right down between delta and theta, and you can just numb out where you're taking a nap. It's so good.
Have you ever used Tap? I think it's called Brain Tap. It's a headset and they have specific, it's like a monthly membership or something to their specific, all the stuff that they have dialed in with those frequencies, different music and stuff like that, different meditations, but it specifically through the earphones, it really is right there getting all the way into the different brain waves.
I have not used that, but I geek out on it so bad. I actually create them here on the computer specifically for myself and for my clients.
I love that. That's
Because
amazing.
it
Oh my gosh.
works. It works.
Right.
If we work with the mind, we'll get amazing results. If we
Mhm.
tie the subconscious to the conscious and get them going in the same direction, you'll accomplish far more than you can imagine.
Yeah, and you're
It's
healing
super
your nervous
powerful.
system at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I didn't think we are going to geek out over here, but that's cool.
Oh, I can geek out on all kinds of stuff. Just keep throwing stuff out at me. But yeah, you briefly brought up willpower earlier, and that was another thing that I wanted to chat with you about because the term willpower gets brought up a lot when people that don't have or don't recognize that they have health issues going on. They see me who's had to dial in my diet specifically, but lots of other things too. But a lot of people say, "Oh, gosh, you don't eat gluten." Like I just don't have the willpower for that. Or gosh, you're so regimented. Like I don't have the willpower to be regimented like you. Or well, how do you respond to that? Because I have conflicting thoughts on whether that's actually willpower or not. Like for me, I don't see it so much. Like, yes, is it a choice? Yes, of course, it's a choice for me to say no to gluten and no to the other things that I know I react to. But it's also when you have experienced the reactions to those
Mhm.
things, that doesn't feel like I have a choice in the matter. So,
Right.
where are you at with that topic?
How about if I introduced, just imagine for a moment that willpower was nothing more than desire, and desire can be programmed. You don't believe me? Look at society, look at media. Tell me what an attractive man looks like. You could describe one to me. Why? Because you were taught that's what an attractive man looks like. Luckily, nobody would describe me except my wife. But because we've been programmed that there is a certain thing, certain feature, a certain way of dressing, a certain way of acting. And because of that, we're programmed to desire that thing. There are things that are desirable to us. Like say, hey, you say most of the sicknesses that your body is dealing with is probably related to sugar consumption at some point. And you're like, yeah, I just don't have the willpower to give up sugar. Oh, okay. So you're addicted to the chemical change that happens in your body. It's much like morphine and alcohol. It's understandable. And they're like, what? And you're like, okay, no, it's just an addiction. I understand that. But you desire the sugar because you like the way you feel when you eat it. And because you like the feeling, you desire the thing. So you've been trained to believe that sugar gives you that feeling. In reality, what the sugar is doing is it's slowly poisoning your system. It's like when you look at shrimp, a lot of people love shrimp, and a lot of people might hate me for saying this, but shrimp are literally the cockroaches of the ocean. They serve the exact same purpose that a cockroach does on Earth. Now, the next time that you look at a shrimp, I want you to think about biting in to that nice, juicy cockroach. I know everybody had just had a gut check, right? Because all we're doing is we're changing the visual, the emotion associated to the thing. Now, if you're being honest and you think about shrimp, cockroach, nobody wants shrimp right now. I don't want shrimp right now. And I grew up loving shrimp. I don't want shrimp. That's gross, right? So what we do is instead of saying my willpower, your willpower is so strong. Every one of you, I want you to understand you have an immense willpower. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here listening to me because it took many of you an immense amount of willpower to get up, let alone take the time to get on this podcast. What you have to identify is not, do I have the willpower to give up gluten or do I have the willpower to give up that? Ask yourself, if this thing is giving me this other result, maybe it's chronic pain. Maybe it's constantly throwing up, being sick. Maybe it's cramping because your body can't handle the gluten. Okay, that's a result of the gluten. So you have to start changing the association with, but I like bread. Bread causes me extreme pain. What do I desire that tastes good that doesn't do that? Okay, it's time to be exploratory. It's time to be curious. Let's try new things. My wife and I got married. Right before we got married, we were dating. Go figure, right? She looked at me one day and she says, you realize I'm a vegan, right? You realize I'm not, right? Almost everything we ate, we shot first. And trust me, you don't shoot corn. You shuck corn, right? So, I mean, we know meat eaters are meat eaters, vegans are vegans. We said I do, and I was a vegan. Why? Did I want to give up meat? No, but I was not willing to give up my wife. I loved her more than I loved the food. Luckily, a few years later, we're sitting at IHOP restaurant, and she orders what was it, the Sicilian scramble or something. And I was like, so I can eat eggs now? She's like, yeah. Sure. And I'm like, hallelujah. In my head, I was like, yeah, I'll have one of those too. But all of a sudden, it was like we found that point where she realized that She loved me more than a requirement of eating a certain way. And she felt a release from that lifestyle. In the same way, we have to change the association to the thing that we desire and say, what is more desirable? Eating this or having this quality of life? When I had to make that change, I was talking about little Debbie Swiss rolls. You can either change your belief about that thing that you love so much, or you can make sure it's just never around. I found a happy medium. It's very seldom ever around, just so I don't have to deal with it. And then when I do, I can have a little bit instead of gorging myself. Is it good for me? No. Am I okay with that? No. Yeah, I am. Because I'm like, you know what? I've done this for so many years. A bite here, a bite there. It's not going to kill me. There's so many other things that could kill me, like the mountain lions or something in the woods. I have bigger risks. So when it comes to willpower, I want everybody to just take a moment and say, willpower is nothing more than a strong desire for something. So don't say you don't have the willpower. Just ask yourself, why do I desire this thing that is causing me pain or sickness? What can I replace that with that would give me the better quality of life and still fulfill the benefit of that desire?
Yeah, that's a great way of changing. It's like giving a perspective shift, and I'm all about perspective shifts. So finding those beliefs that we need to shift a little bit to empower ourselves to a better life in whatever form that looks like, whatever the scenario is. Yeah, I see this so much. Nutrition is a part that people freak out about the most, right? When they're on their health, well, at least when I'm
Yep.
working with them on their health journey, like, I want to do all these things. I want to feel better. I want to be in less pain, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just not, I don't want to give up gluten, or I don't want to give up whatever that vice is. And so it's really about looking at the underneath. Why do I desire this thing that I know is not serving my highest and best?
Sometimes it's usually just a creature comfort. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Look at somebody who's really overweight. I can tell you one thing that I know about them for a fact. They'd rather be uncomfortable and dead, or they'd rather be comfortable and dead than uncomfortable and healthy. Because being healthy takes work. It does. It means you eat a little bit healthier. You do a little bit more exercise. That's uncomfortable to do that to start. But when you do it consistently, all of a sudden it just becomes naturally part of who you are. I liked Arnold Schwarzenegger. The man's got more wrinkles than the California raisins at this point. And I said, why do you still go to the gym? It's who I am. It's what I do. It's always been part of my life. It just becomes part of who you are. Yeah, there's hard workouts. There's painful workouts. There's injuries that happen along the way, but it just becomes a part of who you are. My wife she never missed meat. She was a vegan. Why? Because she chose to be, and it just became easy. Even when we'd go to her family's house and they're serving all the stuff I love to eat, and we're like, yeah, I can't eat that. It was not easy for me because I didn't desire it. I
You
desired to
didn't
be
have the
with my
purpose
wife.
behind it. Yeah. You didn't
Yeah,
have that initial purpose.
I was giving it up to have my wife. She had no desire for it because it didn't fulfill her need. She fulfilled my need, therefore I gave it up. So we have to identify, like, what is it that we want out of our life, and then say, does this really help me get it? If not, then let it go. It's not serving you. If it doesn't serve you, let it go. If it comes back, throw it out and close the door. Don't say it was mine. It came back. No. Who does that? just throw it back out and close the door.
And the other point is, you were able to give up meat because your wife filled that gap,
Yes.
right? So that's an important thing too, is like, we have to shift the perspective again on, it's just not all this stuff that we're getting rid of. We have to like have that replacement
Yeah.
thing.
I
We
mean,
have to create that replacement habit.
she replaced a lifetime of tradition and culture and programming. Like, you can't live without meat. I prefer not to. I found out, yeah, you can. And actually, you can get all and then some that you can't get from me.
Well,
I was
that's a
like, oh,
topic for a future
yeah,
podcast.
exactly. That's what I was saying. It's like, I learned so much about something once I let it go. And I realized that it never, that's why it fits, is I realized that it never was actually fulfilling my needs. It just made me feel like it was because I was told it was supposed to. But when I let it go, that's when I found out there was a whole lot there I never even understood about it because it wasn't controlling me anymore. I was able to look and see a broader picture and be curious. I was like, if I got to eat plants, I got to figure out some way to make it taste better. So we got real creative. Now, one of my favorite meals today is still a vegan meal. You'll never guess what it's called. Cow snot.
Chad. What?
Cow snot. It's got
I-
tofu and onions and potatoes. And we had cooked it up with some Bragg's soy sauce. And we looked at it, and I looked at my wife. I said, that looks like cow snot. She goes, that's what it is. And we have served cow snot all over the country. Everybody loves it.
That's awesome.
Get
That's
creative.
awesome.
You'll find
Yeah.
a replacement for the thing that's not healthy.
Right. And be willing to look outside of the box, right?
Yep.
Like all these things are uncomfortable just because we're stuck in our habits. Changing your habits is uncomfortable. That's all there is to it. So we have to find the purpose in the changing of the habit.
Mhm.
So this has been an amazing conversation. Is there anything that we didn't touch on yet that you would like to leave with our listeners or any just last final thoughts?
Same thing I always like to leave people with because I think people need to hear it more often. There is beauty, there is grace, and there is greatness within you. Now go and reach it in the world today.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us.
Thank you. It's so fun having
Um,
that. Fun having a chat.
I know. So where can everybody find you?
Usually outside. But if you'd like to connect with me more often, you can find me on Facebook. Look up Chad Nedland. I'm this looking guy here. Otherwise, if you want to know when my next live event is going to be, you can just go to waitlist.chadnedland.com and just sign up, and I will give you the information of my next live event, and y'all can come join me for free.
Awesome. Thank you. I will put all that in the show notes. And thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. What a great conversation that was with Chad. He's got so much to share that is practically just bursting out of him at the seams, I feel like. I just love his energy and his spirit and his strong desire to really just help lift people up, to help them find their own purpose and learn how to follow it. What I want to bring this back to is really a refocus on what he said at the beginning with his journey of finding the roots of the human condition. And what he found there was that need for a community and that need for a purpose. Even if there's no hope, you need those two things to really survive and find a way to thrive. Without those two things, surviving is very challenging. And everything that we have gone through COVID with all of the shutdowns and that loss of connection to community, that really affected so many people, our children, our older population, the most vulnerable, especially, were really affected. The chronic health community that didn't feel comfortable being around other people. That was a huge blow to our mental health and our physical health because that is like a trickle down effect. So I want you to think about if you are feeling like you're in a place where you are lacking community, where can you find some? Could you find a Facebook group? Could you start going to church? Could you find a place to go, even just to go to a coffee shop to be around other people and start there, even if you're not actively engaging with them? What you seek out depends on where your starting base is, but if you're not feeling like you are immersed in a community of some sort, seek one out. And if you need help, reach out to me or reach out to Chad, and we can offer maybe some suggestions, or you can be a part of our communities. Finding a purpose also in your daily life is so incredibly important for, again, your mental and physical health. And I want to reiterate something that Chad also spoke to, which is your purpose doesn't need to be grand. I mean, I said in the intro that Chad's purpose is to make a difference in 1 million lives a day. That doesn't need to be your starting purpose. He didn't start there. Okay. He also said that I think it was his mother's purpose at one point was to make sure the cats were fed. That is honestly just as grand of a purpose. Like, can you argue against that? That is also a grand purpose. Maybe your purpose while you are going through a health experience and you can't physically do much and you don't have much energy, maybe it's just to read one book a week or one book a month. And that's what you have the energy to do, right? Maybe it's just to turn off your social media for an hour a day and give full attention to your children or to your spouse with no distractions. Like, we can start with very small purposes because I mean small in that not feeling like a grandiose vision, small but incredibly meaningful both for you and for anybody else that may be involved. So I just want to plant that seed that if you don't have a purpose, if you are maybe depressed, if you have gone through a life change such as an illness or job loss or a divorce, and you've lost the purpose that you thought you had, that doesn't mean there is no more purpose for you. There is something there. There's a lot of things there for you. So I just want to leave you with that. If you want to discuss this further, I'm happy to chat with you. Apply for a call with me. Also, reach out to Chad. In the show notes below, I have listed for you his contact information and where you can sign up to be a part of his next live event online. And in addition, Chad also is giving all of the listeners here a free copy of his Audible book, which is the book on being better. Again, he's a great storyteller. It's his own voice reading the book. And I know that you are going to love it. It's a quick listen. So please go download that and enjoy, again, more of Chad's messages. Thank you so much for listening. One last ask of you, one last favor. Please share this episode with at least one person that you know will benefit from this message. So many people need to hear what we talked about today, and you've heard it. Now you have the ability to share it and help Chad reach his goal of making a difference in 1 million lives a day. So with your share, that helps attain that goal. So that's how big the ripple effects can get with our purpose, right? Start small, ripple out. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon on the next episode of the Health Bridge podcast.